In a stunning escalation of tensions between the White House and the Federal Reserve, President Donald Trump announced on August 25, 2025, that he was firing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, citing unproven allegations of mortgage fraud as cause for her removal. Cook, the first black woman to serve on the Fed's Board of Governors, immediately pushed back, filing a lawsuit on August 28 to challenge the move, arguing that Trump lacks the legal authority to dismiss her without substantial evidence and that the accusations are a pretext for undermining the central bank's independence. The drama intensified when Democratic Representative Maxine Waters, a longtime Trump critic and ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee, appeared on MSNBC's The Weeknight on August 29, calling for the invocation of the 25th Amendment to assess Trump's fitness for office. Waters described Trump's actions as extraordinarily dangerous and the makings of a dictator, warning that his interference could upend the U.S. economy, spike inflation, and erode public trust in institutions. As markets jittered, with the S&P 500 dipping 0.8% on the day of the announcement and Treasury yields rising amid fears of political meddling, this saga highlights deep divisions in Washington, raising alarms about America's economic stability, the sanctity of independent institutions, and potential losses in investor confidence that could cost the U.S. trillions in growth. Data from a recent Philadelphia Fed study shows occupancy fraud like that alleged against Cook can lead to 75% higher default rates, but experts say the real risk here is to the Fed's autonomy, which has helped keep inflation in check at around 2–3% annually since the 1990s, preventing the kind of volatility seen in countries with politicized central banks where inflation has averaged 10 to 15% higher. The controversy erupted when Trump posted a letter on Truth Social addressed to Cook, stating her removal was effective immediately, due to what he called deceitful and potentially criminal conduct. The allegations stem from claims by Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte, who accused Cook of misrepresenting her occupancy status on multiple mortgages in 2021, just before her nomination by then-President Joe Biden. Specifically, Pulte alleged that Cook listed two separate properties, one in Michigan and one in Georgia, as her primary residences within a 2-week period to secure more favorable federally backed loan terms, including lower interest rates and insurance premiums. A third property has since come under scrutiny, with reports suggesting similar inconsistencies. Mortgage fraud of this nature, known as occupancy fraud, is a federal offense that can carry penalties of up to 30 years in prison and fines up to $1 million per count, according to the FBI's mortgage fraud guidelines. However, as of September 1, 2025, no formal charges have been filed against Cook, and her legal team has dismissed the claims as unsubstantiated and unproven, hinting at a possible clerical error, without providing details. 117 This lack of criminal proceedings has fueled speculation that the accusations are politically motivated, especially given Trump's repeated clashes with the Fed over interest rates. Cook, a 60-year-old economist with a PhD from the University of California, Berkeley, has built a career focusing on economic inequality, innovation, and labor markets. Before joining the Fed in 2022, she served as a professor at Michigan State University and advised the Obama and Biden administrations on economic policy. Her historic appointment was hailed as a step toward diversity in economic leadership, with supporters noting that women and minorities hold only about 20% of top Fed positions, according to a 2024 Brookings Institution report. But critics, including some conservative economists, have questioned her qualifications, pointing to her tenure packet obtained via FOIA, which reveals that Michigan State's economics department likely voted against granting her tenure in 2010, only for the dean to overrule them. The packet emphasizes her teaching over research, and one of her key papers has been debunked for methodological flaws, raising doubts about her expertise in macroeconomics, the very field central to Fed decision-making. 96 Despite this, Cook's defenders argue that the attacks smack of bias, with data from the American Economic Association showing that black women economists face 30–40% higher scrutiny rates for their work compared to white male peers. Trump's move marks the first time in the Fed's 112-year history that a president has attempted to fire a governor, testing the limits of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which allows removal only for cause. Legal experts are divided. Some, like those citing a 2018 Supreme Court ruling on the president's authority over independent agencies, believe Trump could prevail if the fraud allegations hold up. 35 others, including former Fed officials, warn that this sets a dangerous precedent, potentially allowing future presidents to stack the board with loyalists. In a hearing on August 29 before U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, a name familiar from Trump's past legal battles, the judge expressed discomfort with the idea of pretextual firings, asking Trump's lawyers, what if the stated cause is demonstrably false? No immediate ruling was issued, but the case could head to the Supreme Court, prolonging uncertainty. 34 for America. The stakes are high. The Fed's independence has been credited with averting deeper recessions, like during the 2008 financial crisis when it injected $4 trillion into the economy without political interference. A politicized Fed could lead to short-term rate cuts boosting stocks, perhaps adding 5 to 10% to the S&P 500 in the near term, for J.P. Morgan estimates, but long-term losses from inflation spikes, with economists warning of a 1–2% GDP drag annually if trust erodes. Enter Maxine Waters, the 87-year-old California Democrat known for her fiery rhetoric against Trump. In her MSNBC interview, Waters didn't mince words. Something's wrong with this president. We need to invoke the 25th Amendment to find out what's wrong with Donald Trump. She argued that firing Cook over flimsy allegations is part of a broader pattern of Trump trying to control the economy, pointing to his demands for rate cuts amid a stable 4.3% federal funds rate. Waters warned of catastrophic consequences, including higher inflation potentially jumping to 5 to 7% from the current 2.5%, volatile growth, and weakened currencies, echoing Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's earlier cautions about Trump's policies leading to a trade war that could shave 1.5% off U.S. GDP. One data backs her concerns. A 2023 Philadelphia Fed study found that occupancy fraud contributes to housing bubbles, with fraudulent borrowers defaulting 75% more often, but politicizing the Fed has historically led to worse outcomes. In Argentina, for example, where central bank interference has fueled 200% annual inflation. 121 Waters' call for the 25th Amendment, which allows the vice president and cabinet to declare a president unfit, is unlikely to succeed given Trump's loyal cabinet, but it amplifies Democratic fears of authoritarianism. Polls show 55% of Americans support Fed independence, per a Gallup survey from July 2025, with 62% worried about political meddling hurting their finances. The mortgage fraud allegations against Cook are murky but serious. Pulte, a Trump appointee and real estate heir, claimed Cook falsified documents on properties in East Lansing, Michigan, Atlanta, Georgia, and possibly a third. For the Michigan home, Cook allegedly claimed it as her primary residence for a $417,000 loan in June 2021, then did the same for the Georgia condo 2 weeks later for $300,000. Such misrepresentations could save thousands in interest. Data from Freddie Mac shows owner-occupied mortgages average 0.5–1% lower rates than investment properties. Cook's lawsuit skirts direct denial, calling the claims a weapon of choice to attack the Fed, and her team suggests a paperwork mix-up. 118 Interestingly, Trump's own history echoes this. He's accused rivals like Cook of fraud while facing similar scrutiny himself, including a 2023 New York civil fraud case where he was fined $454 million for inflating assets. Hypocrisy aside, if proven, Cook's actions could undermine the Fed's credibility. Board members oversee $9 trillion in assets and set policies affecting 330 million Americans. Markets have reacted with caution. On August 26, the day after Trump's announcement, the Dow Jones fell 200 points, or 0.5%, while 10-year Treasury yields rose to 3.85%, signaling investor unease. Analysts at Goldman Sachs estimate that prolonged uncertainty could reduce U.S. GDP growth by 0.3–0.5% in 2026, costing $50 to $100 billion in lost output. For everyday Americans, this means higher borrowing costs. Mortgage rates, already at 6.5%, could climb to 7% if inflation fears mount, adding $200 monthly to a $400,000 loan. Small businesses, reliant on Fed stability for loans, face tighter credit. SBA data shows 28% of firms already struggling with rates above 5%. Losses extend to retirement savings. 401ks tied to stocks could see 5 to 10% volatility swings, per Vanguard's 2025 projections, eroding trillions in household wealth built since the post-COVID recovery. Trump defends the firing as draining the swamp, arguing Cook's alleged fraud disqualifies her from influencing monetary policy. His administration points to a 2023 FHFA initiative using AI from Palantir to detect fraud in Fannie Mae's database, which flagged Cook's loans. But critics like Representative R. O'Connor, DCA, urge Cook to release full mortgage documents for transparency, noting that without them, the public can't verify claims. 126 Trump's broader agenda includes pressuring Fed Chair Jerome Powell for rate cuts to 1.3%, despite inflation hovering at 2.5%, a level economists say warrants caution to avoid overheating. Data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis shows U.S. growth at 2.8% in Q2 2025, solid but not booming, making aggressive cuts risky. If Trump succeeds in reshaping the Fed, it could boost short-term exports by weakening the dollar, down 2% since his re-election, but retaliatory tariffs from trading partners like China could hit U.S. farmers hard, with soybean exports already down 15% year-over-year per USDA stats. Waters' 25th Amendment push isn't her first rodeo. She called for it in 2017 over Trump's mental health and again in 2021 post-Capitol riot. This time, she ties it to economic sabotage, saying Trump's dictatorial moves threaten democracy. A Fox News poll from August 2025 shows 48% of voters view Trump as unfit, up from 42% pre-election, with independents split 50-50. For U.S. interests, the losses are multifaceted. Eroded global standing, as allies like the EU question America's reliability, EU inflation at 2.2%, stable due to independent ECB, higher national debt servicing costs, with interest payments already at $1 trillion annually per CBO, and social divides, with 60% of black voters in a Pew survey seeing Cook's targeting as racially motivated. As the lawsuit unfolds, Cook continues working, attending Fed meetings and giving speeches on AI's labor impact. Trump, meanwhile, nominated Stephen Miron, a loyalist, to replace her, signaling intent to pack the board. If the courts side with Trump, it could greenlight firings of other dissenters, like Powell, whose term ends in 2026. Economic models from Moody's predict that full Fed politicization could add 3% to inflation by 2027, costing households $2,000 yearly in higher prices. Conversely, upholding Cook might embolden resistance to executive overreach, preserving the Fed's role in crises, like its $2.3 trillion COVID response that saved 5 million jobs, per Fed estimates. Public reaction is polarized. On X, formerly Twitter, posts range from support for Trump, drain the swamp, to outrage, with hashtag Fire Lisa Cook trending alongside number 25th amendment now. A viral video from conservative commentator Byron Donalds argues Cook must be held accountable, garnering 15,000 likes, while Waters' clip has 30,000 shares decrying Trump's fascism. 116 engagement data shows 70% of discussions focus on fraud versus politics, per Brandwatch Analytics. For America, the real loss is trust. A 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer reports only 40% trust government institutions, down 5% from 2024, fueling populism but hindering recovery from events like the 2023 banking scares. This isn't just about one governor, it's a battle for the soul of U.S. economic policy. If Trump prevails, short-term wins like lower rates potentially dropping mortgages to 5.5%, boosting home sales by 10% per NAR, could mask long-term perils, such as dollar devaluation already down 1.5% versus euro, and foreign investment flight. China holds $800 billion in U.S. Treasuries, per TIC data. Losses for workers. Higher inflation erodes wages, with real earnings flat at 1.2% growth in 2025 per BLS. For investors, volatility spikes VIX to 20, up from 15, costing trillions in market cap. Waters urges aggressive action, but with Republicans controlling Congress, House 220 to 215, Senate 53 to 47 post-2024, impeachment or amendment invocation is improbable. Instead, oversight hearings loom, with Waters vowing subpoenas. Trump's allies, like Kevin Hassett, defend the firing as within rights, citing U.S. precedents. 4. Yet, history warns. Nixon's Fed pressure in the 1970s fueled 12% inflation, costing $500 billion in today's dollars. As September dawns, eyes turn to the Fed's rate decision on the 18th. Will it cut 25 basis points as expected, or hold amid chaos? For America, the interest is clear. Stable institutions foster growth. U.S. GDP up 28% since 2010 thanks to Fed actions. Losses from erosion. Trillions in wealth, jobs, and faith in the system. This story, blending fraud claims, power grabs, and constitutional drama, underscores a nation at a crossroads. Will it protect independence or risk the economic fallout? Diving deeper, consider Cook's background. Born in Georgia, she rose through academia despite challenges, with research on how violence affects black inventors, work cited over 1,000 times per Google Scholar. But her debunked paper on patents and lynchings, criticized for data errors, has resurfaced, with critics like Chris Brunette alleging plagiarism. 96 tenure at MSU was contentious, with her packet noting emphasis on diversity over pure merit, echoing broader DEI debates where 45% of firms report backlash, per Deloitte 2025 survey. Trump's firing fits his pattern. He's dismissed over 300,000 federal workers since January 2025 via buyouts and layoffs, per OPM data, aiming for a leaner government but sparking brain drain. Resignations up 20% in agencies like CDC. 40 in July, he fired BLS Commissioner Erica McIntyre over jobs data he disliked, calling it fake. Such moves save $50 billion annually in payroll but cost expertise, with vacancies delaying regulations and aid. Waters, representing a diverse LA district, sees racial undertones, black homeownership at 44% versus 74% white, per census, making fraud claims sensitive. Her 25th call engages voters. Democratic turnout in midterms could rise 5% if framed as anti-authoritarian, per 538 models.